Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the ancient and frankly majestic text of Psalm 76. Have you ever wondered how poetry can perfectly capture the sheer, mind-bending scale of divine power right alongside human fragility? Well, you are in for a real treat. Whether you're a literature buff or just absolutely fascinated by ancient history, we're going to look closely at the incredible imagery and the deliberate pacing of this song.
Okay, so let's ground ourselves right in the actual source text. Look at the English Standard Version here. It notes right at the very top that this is a psalm of Asaph, and it's explicitly labeled as a song, complete with directions to the choir master to be played with stringed instruments. So as we break down its rich poetic imagery, we really need to keep in mind that this wasn't just meant to be read on a page. It was meant to be heard, felt, and experienced musically.
To really get a feel for it, we're going to follow this stanza-by-stanza structure to trace the emotional escalation across 4 distinct themes. We'll be looking at God's dwelling in Zion, breaking weapons of war, the terror of divine judgment, and finally, the ultimate human response. All right, Section 1, God's dwelling in Zion, establishing the divine abode. The text opens up in verses 1 and 2 by anchoring this massive cosmic power to a highly localized physical geography, specifically Salem and Zion. But, it doesn't stay peaceful for long. Verse 3 immediately hits us with this dramatic action. It says, "There he broke the flashing arrows, the shield, the sword, and the weapons of war." It brilliantly illustrates how this divine presence effortlessly neutralizes the tools of earthly conflict. And notice the specificity there. It's not just weapons in general. It's the flashing arrows, the shield, the sword. The imagery literally drops us right into the middle of a battlefield that's being instantly, entirely disarmed. And then, right after that incredibly striking image of broken weapons, the text calls for a Selah. Now, because this is a musical piece, this term, which pops up here and then again later after verse 9, dictates a deliberate pause. The author is actively demanding that we stop, take a breath, and really reflect on that vivid image of shattered weapons before we move forward. Moving right along into Section 2, breaking weapons of war and the deceit of the stout-hearted. The text escalates really rapidly here, declaring God glorious and more majestic than the mountains full of prey. Verses 5 and 6 use this incredibly vivid language to describe the fate of these earthly warriors. And the progression? It's devastating. The stout-hearted men of war are stripped of their spoil. They sink into sleep. They are completely unable to use their hands. Even the rider and the horse lay stunned. It is a picture of total paralysis. These fierce, battle-hardened warriors are completely incapacitated, and not by some opposing army, but by a mere rebuke from the God of Jacob. Which brings us to Section 3, the terror of divine judgment, where the earth falls silent. We're hitting the climax of the poem now in verses 7 through 9, and the focus dramatically shifts from that localized battlefield to absolute, cosmic authority. Verse 7 acts as the absolute emotional peak of the entire text. It demands reverence through this powerful rhetorical question. But you are to be feared. Who can stand before you when once your anger is roused? It completely shifts the perspective directly to us, the listeners. It's asking us to really consider the sheer scale of this power. Because when judgment is uttered from the heavens, the text says the earth itself feared and was still. The crucial takeaway here is this brilliant juxtaposition the author sets up. On one hand, we've got the devastating fate of those aggressive, stout-hearted warriors, stunned, stripped, and sinking into sleep, right? But on the other hand, we see the ultimate purpose of God's terrifying judgment, to save all the humble of the earth. That ultimate power is used for the ultimate protection of the lowly. And right after that profound realization, boom, we get our second Selah, another commanded pause for reflection. So, having established this supreme, undeniable power, we arrive at our final section. Section 4, the ultimate human response, vows, praise, and awe. Verses 10 through 12 resolve the whole narrative by dictating exactly how humanity has to respond to this new reality. Verse 10 gives us this fascinating, almost paradoxical image. It says, "Surely the wrath of man shall praise you. The remnant of wrath you will put on like a belt." A footnote in the source text actually suggests remnant could also mean extremity. But either way, the visual is just stunning. It shows that even human anger and hostility are completely overpowered, contained, and repurposed into divine praise. It's worn like a mere accessory, literally like a belt. And that builds directly into some actionable instruction.
Verse 11 outlines a super clear, three-step sequential directive for the faithful after witnessing this absolute authority. Step 1, make your vows to the Lord your God. Step 2, actually perform them. And step 3, let all around him bring gifts to him who is to be feared. It is a massive call to active, committed reverence.
The poem then concludes with verse 12, driving home the ultimate point about hierarchy. It states that God cuts off the spirit of princes, and that he is to be feared by the kings of the earth. The author leaves zero room for earthly arrogance here. Even the most powerful human rulers you can possibly imagine, the princes, the kings, are entirely subject to this fear and submission. Which brings us to the core reflection of this entire explainer. If even the flashing arrows of war and the very spirits of earthly kings are effortlessly broken, what earthly power can truly stand? It's a profound question, isn't it? It perfectly summarizes the awe-inspiring message right at the heart of Psalm 76, leaving us to really think about where true power actually lies. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the text today.